Hey guys, and welcome back to the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Ash Owen, and I am so excited to find moments of joy with you today. I am so glad to be back recording the podcast. It is so much fun. But if you didn't know, we actually are getting a little bit more of our video content up on our social media. So you can actually follow us over at Everyday Joy Pod over on Instagram. And why don't you share it? Why don't you share one of your favorite little messages? Why don't you let people know that you love this podcast? I am so excited to dive into the Word of God with you today. So why don't you get your notebook, get ready. We're going to jump straight into today's episode.
But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That's from Galatians 5:22-23.
Tilly.
Hello.
We're back in studio. We're smashing out the episodes this week.
We are.
And I
How
am
fun.
having so much fun. Now,
So much fun.
Tilly, I don't know if you've seen, but basically on social media, they've been doing like this massive trend called ins and outs.
What's
Have
that?
you seen it?
No. I'm sometimes living under a rock, so
Okay.
you're going to have to tell me.
So basically the way it goes is people have been doing this thing. So instead of like New Year's resolutions,
Okay.
people are doing like their New Year's ins and their New Year's outs, which is more based on like habits, right?
Right.
So rather than being like, oh, I have to do this to be successful, it's more like this, it's like a soft goal.
Okay.
Like a
soft launch.
goal where it's like my ins are going to bed on time, or
I love
like
that.
my ins are not going on my phone before bed.
Yeah.
They're some of my ins this year.
They're great ends.
And
So what are your
then, like,
outs?
outs are spending too much time on social media.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that.
Totally. My other out is being rushed.
That's a good one.
I'm such a frazzled person. I'm literally going to give you like a 30-second like recap of what my morning
Tell
looked
me.
like. I'm getting ready. I'm in my work outfit. I'm rushing around because I think that we're recording this podcast first thing in the morning, which I just got the times wrong. I've texted you. I'm kind of like, okay, I have 30 minutes to get to the studio. I have 30 minutes to charge all the cameras, get everything set up. And I haven't made my lunch. I need to boil some spaghetti.
Oh my goodness. You do all that in the morning.
So I'm like boiling spaghetti, ironing pants. Like I can be the most chaotic
I can't wait till
person
Toby witnesses this.
on the face of planet Earth. Like so chaotic. But because I can be so chaotic, right? I miss things. I forget
Oh, totally.
things. My out is to not be busy so I don't forget things. So we're looking at Galatians 5 verse 22 in today's episode.
Yeah.
So it's, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. She's a bit of a list,
It's a long list.
but it's great, hey.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this maybe 3 times, but I heard this thing once that said when you're like trying to figure out what you need to work on as you go into a year, you need to like put your name at the start of this verse, right?
Oof.
So you need to go, Ashley is full of love. Ashley is joyful. Ashley has peace. Like you put your name at like the start of each one, and you go, what one sounds like the biggest lie? Which is crazy, but like
That's exposing.
Like, am I
Yeah.
living, or is my life
Am I self-controlled? Am I kind?
Totally. Is my life showing these things? And look, take a deep breath. None of us are going to get this perfect.
Oh, no.
None of us are going to be able to like
Say yes to
nail-
all of those.
Totally. So like
Yeah.
we are not preaching or saying we're going to get there. But what we are saying is the essence of these things. When I read this, like the fruit of the Spirit, like if you want to walk in a way that reflects Jesus, this is kind of the things that you want your life to look out. Like, are we depicting love? Are we joyful? Are we like seeking God's peace? Are we being kind? It's kind of one of those things of, okay, well, if that's what the fruit of the Spirit is, if that is what a picture of reflecting God is, how can I live that out and look like that? It's honestly quite a challenge sometimes. It's
it's
not
a major heart check.
It's not an easy thing to read because like all those things sound so great. Like I want all of these things so
Yes.
deeply, but it takes us like what we said in the first episode this week on Monday's episode where we said we have to taste to see. It's like we actually need to do the work to experience these fruits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like this verse, like we were saying, it is a major heart check, and it really does. You have to like allow yourself to be checked by the Lord and have him expose areas in your hearts that maybe aren't quite living up to the fruits of the Holy Spirit, or aren't quite, I guess, this isn't the harvest that you're reaping, from how you're living. And when like Paul writes this, he is just beforehand, like he's addressing a community like the Galatians, and like they're not really getting along very well, and they're not treating each other very, very well at all. Like he literally has to tell them, like, please do not bite and devour each other. Like these people aren't getting along, and they're at odds with each other. And the verses just before is where he's describing what it looks like to live out your flesh, really. And it says, hatred, discord, jealousy. My version even says fits of rage. Like he's describing what happens when we forget about the grace of God that is revealed in the gospel. And so just as a contrast, he's like, these are the fruits of the Spirit. And so he goes to list love, joy, faithfulness, patience, kindness, self-control. Like they are how the Lord wants us to be living and treating one another as well. Like it is through kindness and through joy.
One awesome thing about this is, like, yes, we would love in a perfect world to be able to action all of this perfectly. But I think like the most actionable way that I guess I have lived it out has been going, when I make a decision, I go, okay, is this going to bear the fruit that Jesus would want?
Yeah, I love that.
So it's kind of like putting on the glasses of like the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And when you're stuck in a circumstance where you're like, okay, I'm dealing with this like awkward tension, I'm dealing with this tough relationship circumstance. It's not actually a thing of going, this is okay, this is fine, like I can't be upset, I can't be disappointed. But it's a check of going, am I going to let the circumstance rule my mind and my heart? Am I going to let this circumstance steal my peace or take my joy or prevent me from being kind?
Yeah.
It's taking it, filtering it through these fruits, and actioning it and making our behavior, I guess, reflect those things.
Absolutely.
And so it makes me think about a circumstance where I just had an argument with someone, and like it's always like people that are closest to you because you're the most vulnerable with them. And I had this argument, and it honestly wasn't even over anything that like it needed.
It's usually something very silly.
I was so frustrated. It was like probably something as silly as like, I don't know, I can't even remember. I wanted like someone to come do something, and then they were like, we couldn't, and I was counting on them to come, right? So not even something terrible. Like we all have to bail on things every now and again. But for some reason I was really counting on that at that season. I literally said to myself, usually I would just be like, I'm so frustrated. I'd maybe like vent and like get frustrated. And I was like, no, I am really working on this year self-control and taming my tongue. They're like the two things that I'm like really focusing on. And I just like felt like, okay, Ash, you have to go for a walk. And in that walk, you need to actually rethink about why this is frustrating you. And it took a moment of being like, okay, if I like get frustrated at this person, and in that moment I had to go, okay, am I going to let this steal my peace? Am I now going to go and have to do this thing and be grumpy because this person didn't come? Because in other times I would have spent the whole trip doing this thing on my own when I wanted to go with, someone else. I'm so frustrated. This would have been so much more fun if I wasn't on my own. But like in all honesty, that's where I would be. Like you let that sit with you. But I went for my walk before I went on with my day.
Like a prayer walk.
It was like a prayer walk. And it went from being frustrated to being like, okay, God, well, maybe they needed a rest. Maybe they needed some time to recoup after a long day. I was able to let gentleness and kindness take over that emotion.
Yeah, I love that.
And then I went and I did what I needed to do, and I was fine on my own.
I was fine in the end.
But sometimes we let the silliest things rob us of these fruits of the Spirit. Because we don't take the time to bring it through that lens, right?
Or rob us from being the fruits of the Spirit.
Totally.
I like these verses, the most practical way that I have found in my life to, I guess, exhibit these verses and these fruits is like, I mean, you ask the Lord for patience, He's going to give you a situation where you have to exercise patience.
Yeah.
You ask the Lord to check your heart that you're not jealous towards others, He's going to put you in a situation to check your heart that you're not jealous.
Totally.
So like, I mean, we all go through these seasons, whether it's a colleague or, you know, when we're studying full time and we've got to work a casual job in retail, there are so many customers that have tested my patience day in and day out. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to choose kindness today. Like, and you have to. And you're like, well, you know what? That makes sense. Because like literally last night I was praying for the Lord to grow me in these fruits of the Spirit. And He's like, okay, well, here you go. Here's the situation now. Are you going to be kind? Are you going to be patient?
Yeah.
Are you going to be self-controlled? Yeah. Like, that's how we can live it out practically as well.
Yeah, it's so true. And I guess today as people are listening, like, we understand and we aren't perfect at this by any stretch, but it's the decision to be intentional about it. So if you're listening today, what I would encourage you to do is like take a second when you feel that frustration, when you feel that disappointment, and it'll happen. It happens daily. Like that's why it is a daily choice. Don't let a bad situation, a bad decision, a bad circumstance rob you of these fruits or rob you of the ability to show these fruits to other people. Now, the fruit of the Spirit is joy, love, peace, forbearance, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. They're not necessarily all easy things that we can just pick up at the snap of a finger, but I would encourage you today, as your application, when you are faced with a circumstance today, and I'm almost sure that you will, why don't you take a moment, say, God, help me not to think of it in this way. Help me to produce your good fruits in every circumstance. Well, I hope that you got so much out of today's episode, and I cannot wait to chat with Tilly even more tomorrow. Until then, I hope you're able to find moments of joy all day long. Why don't you go ahead and leave us a 5-star written review over on Apple Podcasts or over on Spotify. That way more people can find out about this incredible community and the little bits of everyday joy that we get to have together. Until tomorrow, I hope you have an incredible day.